In the movies, it always plays out the same way. A soldier runs dry, out of bullets, out of time. He grabs the nearest enemy rifle off a dead man, racks it, and keeps fighting. In the Ardennes, in the winter of 1944, doing that could get you killed. Not by the Germans, by the men in the foxholes beside you. The forest was black with fog and snow, and you could not see 10 feet in front of your own rifle. So American soldiers learned to fight by sound. Every weapon on that battlefield had its own voice, and the German guns did not sound anything like the American ones. The German machine gun tore the air like ripping canvas. The German submachine gun chugged out a slow, mechanical stutter, and the rule that passed from veteran to replacement was simple. If you picked up a German gun and fired it inside your own lines, you would not draw the enemy. You would draw your own artillery, so you left it in the snow, because the sound alone would mark you as the enemy. To understand that rule, you have to understand the sound. And the sound came from the way the Germans built their guns. Start with the one every veteran remembers, the MG-42, a general-purpose machine gun chambered in 7.92 millimeter Mauser, fed from a belt, designed in 1942 by a firm that, before the war, had been making sheet metal lanterns. It fired at roughly 1,200 rounds per minute. Some variants pushed higher. 1,200 rounds per minute is about 20 rounds every second. That is faster than the human ear can separate. The individual shots stop sounding like shots. They fuse into one long, continuous tearing noise, like a sheet of canvas being ripped in half or a buzz saw biting into wood. The Germans called it the bone saw. The Soviets called it the linoleum ripper. American soldiers called it Hitler's zipper. The British, borrowing an old name from the First War, called it the Spandau. A Canadian soldier named Stanley Sislowski, who faced it in Italy, wrote it down plainly. The Bren gun could manage 540 rounds per minute at best. The German gun spat out 1,200. He called it a weapon to be feared. The American machine gun did not sound like that. The Browning 30 caliber fired at 400 to 600 rounds per minute, slow enough that you could count the shots, a measured hammering thump. Same battlefield, opposite voice. Then there was the German submachine gun, the MP-40. The Allies wrongly called it the Schmeisser, after a man who never actually designed it. It fired a 9mm pistol round at about 500 rounds per minute, slow for a submachine gun, which gave it a low, chugging stutter. The men who faced it called it the burp gun, and the American rifle answered in a language all its own, the M1 Garand, semi-automatic 30-06, ending each clip with that bright metallic ping as the empty clip ejected. 8 shots, then ping, then reload. Here is the detail most people miss. None of those signatures were an accident. They were the sound of two different philosophies of war. The German squad was built around the machine gun. The gun was the heart of the unit, the thing that did the killing, and the rifleman existed to carry its ammunition, protect it, and move it forward. A German infantry company of around 150 men fielded roughly 15 MG-42s. The Germans wanted that brutal rate of fire on purpose because they believed a gunner has only a brief moment to put rounds on a target before recoil throws off his aim. So they crammed as much lead as possible into that moment. The American squad was built around the man. The rifleman with his Garand was the unit, and the machine gun supported him. An American rifle company fielded only about 2 light machine guns. So when the shooting started, the two armies sounded completely different. German fire was a storm of ripping machine guns. American fire was the steady crack of semi-automatic rifles. The acoustic fingerprint of each side was a direct product of how it chose to fight, and in the right conditions, that fingerprint became a matter of life and death. Those conditions arrived on the 16th of December, 1944. At 5:30 that morning, nearly 2,000 German guns opened up along a front almost 100 miles long. Operation Walk am Rhein. Watch on the Rhine. The last great German offensive in the West, aimed straight through the Ardennes, a stretch of dense pine forest the Allies had treated as a quiet sector. It was the worst possible ground to see in. Thick coniferous forest, deep snow, and a fog that sat in the trees and never lifted. Temperatures held near or below freezing for weeks, and the daylight was gone by mid-afternoon. In that forest, a man could not see the enemy until the enemy was on top of him. So the soldiers oriented themselves the only way left to them. They listened. They fixed threats by sound and by muzzle flash, and they told friend from foe by the voice of the guns. A weapon firing in the wrong place, in the wrong language, was an alarm bell. On the Schnee Eifel, where two entire regiments of the Green 106th Division would soon be surrounded and forced to surrender, a private named Leon Goldberg, manning a water-cooled Browning, heard the German trucks and tanks massing in the dark long before he could see a single one of them, and the paranoia ran deeper than the fog. A German officer named Otto Skorzeny had sent English-speaking commandos behind American lines wearing American uniforms, driving captured American jeeps. Only a few dozen ever got through, but the rumor of them spread like fire. Sentries challenged each other with questions about baseball and movie stars. Everyone was hunting for the enemy among themselves. In that atmosphere, an unexpected German sound inside the perimeter did not invite hesitation. It invited everything you had. You can hear all of this in one position on the first day of the battle. On a wooded ridge above a Belgian village called Lanzerath, 18 men dug into the snow. They were the intelligence and reconnaissance platoon of the 394th Infantry Regiment, 99th Infantry Division, led by a 20-year-old lieutenant named Lyle Buck. Beside them sat 4 artillery observers. That morning they watched a friendly tank destroyer unit pull out and leave them alone on the ridge. Their orders were 3 words: hold at all costs. Then came the paratroopers, more than 500 men of the 9th Fallschirmjäger Regiment, advancing across open ground toward the ridge. Buck's 18 men, fighting partly by sight and partly by the sound and flash of guns in the failing light, broke one assault, then a second, then a third. By the end of the day, they had killed or wounded around 92 Germans. They held until they were out of ammunition, surrounded, many of them wounded. Buck shot through the leg. One of his men, Sakanikas, horribly wounded in the face. Every one of them survived as prisoners. And because 18 men had held that ridge for the better part of a day, the German armored column waiting behind those paratroopers, the spearhead under an SS officer named Joachim Piper, lost roughly 20 hours. Buck later described it without any drama at all. He said it felt hopeless, like a nightmare that would never end. Years later, his platoon became the most decorated American platoon of the entire war for a single action. This was the kind of fight where you lived or died by your ears. If you want the real mechanics of how these battles were fought, not the Hollywood version, take a second to subscribe. It helps the channel keep telling these stories the way they actually happened. Now back to the forest. By the night of the 16th, the fighting had spread north to a pair of Belgian villages, Rocherath and Krinkelt, in front of a low rise called Elsenborn Ridge. Here the men of the 2nd and 99th Infantry Divisions found themselves in the purest version of the nightmare. German armor and infantry of the 12th SS Panzer Division pushed through the woods and the fog in the dark. American soldiers were cut off inside individual houses, sometimes with German tanks rolling past the windows. They could not see the attack, they could only hear it. So the fighting was settled at point-blank range by interlocking machine gun and rifle fire from prepared positions, backed by massed artillery called in on sound and instinct. The 99th Division was outnumbered by something like 5-1. It inflicted casualties at a ratio closer to 18-1. It lost about a fifth of its strength doing it, 465 men killed. In that one northern sector, German losses ran past 4,000 dead, with around 60 tanks and guns destroyed. Elsenborn Ridge was the only place along the entire front of the Bulge where the Germans never broke through. One historian called the stand of those two divisions the most decisive action of the whole campaign, and it was fought, in large part, by men who were aiming at sounds in the dark. So put yourself back in that forest. Out of ammunition, a dead German submachine gun lying in the snow at your feet. In the movies, you pick it up. In the Ardennes, you understood exactly what would happen if you did. The moment that gun chugged to life inside your own perimeter, every American near you would hear the burp gun, not a rifle, and reach the one conclusion the sound always meant. The Germans were inside the wire. The response would not be a question. It would be rifle fire, machine gun fire, and if there was time, artillery, all of it turned inward onto you. And even if the sound did not kill you, the gun itself was a poor bargain. Its ammunition fit nothing in the American supply chain. So the moment the captured rounds ran dry, it became dead weight. The MG-42, for all its terror, devoured ammunition and cooked its own barrel, which a crew had to swap out every 250 rounds or so. A captured German gun was useful for a few minutes and a liability after that, so the wisdom that moved from veteran to replacement was the safer one. Leave it. Drop the German gun in the snow and find an American one. In that forest, your life depended less on the weapon in your hands than on the sound it made.
There is a reason the men who survived that forest rarely talked about the cold or the hunger or even the fear when you asked them what they remembered. They talked about the sound, the ripping canvas of the MG-42, a noise so total that, as the veterans said, no one who ever heard it would forget it. It outlived the war. It outlived the men who feared it. West Germany would rebuild that very gun for its post-war army, and its mechanism would live on inside American and NATO machine guns that are still firing today. But go back to where we started, the soldier in the movie, out of bullets, reaching for the enemy's rifle. He never understood the thing the men in the Ardennes understood in their bones. On that battlefield, in that fog, your weapon was not just a tool for killing, it was your voice. It told everyone around you which side you were on. And the wrong voice, even for a few seconds, even in your own hands, could be the last sound you ever made.